Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
And I'm Sylvia Earle, explorer at National Geographic, founder of Mission Blue, ocean elder, and
and this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations about interesting topics.
With interesting people.
With interesting people, exactly. You can put your questions and answers into the Q&A box, and later on in the show, we will get through as many of them as we possibly can. And we will be posting some links. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Hopefully. Oh my goodness.
We need to go all the way to the beginning. I thought we were.
Oh my God, I'm in trouble. Bear with us, people. I don't know why we can't share, but in any event.
There we go. Should be there.
No. Where is it? Oh no.
There.
Here we are. Oh no.
Almost there. We have one thing to start with, and we always do.
Live video is always such a joy, right? But we will start off today by saying that
the world, look at it. It's
blue.
Never forget that.
So today we're being joined by Anesti Vega. I met Anesti at a at a yacht club function in Alameda, and he really is so passionate. The only thing he's more passionate about than safety than diving is safety in the water. So Anesti, can you join us? Turn on your camera and video. There he is.
Hey, hello everyone.
Woo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got through the slideshow. Open. These are the challenges of Zoom. I'm so glad you could join us today. We really want to talk about the big problem of water safety. Sylvia and I were talking about it, and we really think that it's quite possible that there's more people that know how to drive a car than know how to swim.
Absolutely.
And I was looking at some of the statistics that you sent, and I mean, I was really shocked to read that more than 3,500 people in the United States every year drown. And that's not even including like boating accidents or natural disasters. And then around the world, it's something more around the 350,000 mark.
It's largely because they're just not comfortable in the water. There's something that it's really easy to learn, but if you haven't taken the plunge, if you will, and realize that make the ocean, make water your friend, and that you can stay in the water and stay alive, float,
exactly.
To float like woman in this image for very, very long periods of time. People who are comfortable in the water have been dunked overboard through some accident and have been at sea even without flotation devices, although they certainly help, but just on their own are able to stay afloat for days. And they really, the temperature is the biggest enemy there. So it's teaching people to feel that comfort and to realize we're mostly water.
That's
and
true.
That working with water, you can not only survive, but you can have a great time underwater. That's where you come in too, getting kids really to embrace water, fresh water, and the sea in all their glory.
Absolutely. There's a very intrinsic, almost spiritual like connection that we have to the water, with the proportion of water on Earth to the proportion of water in our bodies. And there's something even almost therapeutic about being in the water and having a sort of healing property.
Yeah.
And there's a large historical context to for a lot of people and their disconnect from that connection with water. And so, we're doing a lot of work right now to help bridge that gap.
So what led you to start doing this kind of work?
I lived around the water most of my life. I was born in New Orleans and moved around a lot as a kid, but spent most of my childhood and life in Florida, and then moved to California for a time, only to come back to Florida for unknown reasons, apparently. But it really kind of happened by happenstance, and it's a story of healing. I served in the Army from 2000 to 2004, and like a lot of veterans, I got out and I struggled with PTSD and was involved in a lot of high risk, high adrenaline filled activities, to try and help fill that void that we felt back in combat. And I thought my next big adventure, adrenaline filled adventure, was to go diving with sharks.
Did you tell the sharks?
Yeah. So they didn't get the memo because my first few dozen dives, nobody showed up. No sharks showed up.
They have to be afraid of us.
Yeah, somebody didn't give them the cue. But I had this idea, this very preconceived notion about what scuba diving was, and I've learned how to swim, for as long as I could remember. In fact, I didn't meet another adult, especially, that didn't know how to swim until I joined the Army. And we had other soldiers in my platoon from Nebraska or Arkansas that have never seen the ocean or never really went near a body of water and didn't know how to swim. So when it came to that part of the physical training, there was a sharp learning curve for them, especially in basic training. But I got scuba certified. In the course of my scuba certification, that moment I became neutrally buoyant, and I was fully submerged in the water, and I was hyper focused on my breathing, especially once I fine-tuned the air in my BCD, and I could start to breathe in and rise in the water column a little bit, exhale and start to descend a little bit. I started to see the direct correlation between my breathing and my positioning in the water column. And there was just something about that just for a glimpse helped me feel what it was like to be normal again, because PTSD is really, for me at least, a lot of noise in my head that keeps me from focusing, from keeping me from being able to meditate in a lot of ways. And scuba diving ended up becoming very therapeutic for me, and it didn't solve all my problems, but it helped me on that journey. It was the pinnacle moment in my journey of healing from that, and I just have been on the path to sharing it ever since.
It's transformative.
It really is. And it's such a help to, have people such as yourself willing to help people that don't know how to swim. And again, looking at, and I think a lot of times people are out there and they don't even recognize, like, what does someone who's in trouble or in distress in the water, what does that look like? Usually in the movies we'll see, someone's thrashing around, they're screaming for help. That's sort of like maybe water distress, but it's not drowning. I've seen it often myself, where you go by a pool full of kids and there'll be like that one kid and he's like not really, you just know something's off, and you have to call out to them and say, hey, are you okay? If they don't answer you right away, you go back and take a hard look. It seems that's like a key thing. Oftentimes we'll see a kid gets in the water, they get exhausted, they don't want to look like the weak guy in there, so they stay in, they maybe push themselves too hard, and they get in trouble in a hurry. What are some of the things that people, besides just calling out to check, are you okay, what are some other things that people should look for or be aware of to help keep kids safe in the water?
I think it should be a healthy conversation before they even get in the water, and to have that conversation of honesty, like, hey, how much have you swam? Have you had any formal instruction? How comfortable are you? Have you ever swam here before? Those are all conversations that we need to have with children before we're like, hey, we're going to go down to the local creek, and if it's your first time, you may not know that there might be an undertow or a strong current. And, much like in scuba diving, we preach that you never dive beyond the limits of your training and experience. Well, swimming is really no different. And so it really takes an honest look at what what your skills and experience are. And like I fell in love with scuba diving because I thought that was going to be my next big adventure. And the more I wanted to share that with others, the more I realized scuba diving is really like a foreign language to people who don't have that comfort level with water. And so it's really about meeting people where they're at to be able to get them involved. And if nothing else, like Dr. Earl had mentioned, it's not only just a fun activity, but the work that we do at Diversity in Aquatics, we treat it as not just a survival skill, but a social determinant of health in the public health model, that you're more likely to be able to live this type of life with this type of health and well-being if you have this survival skill of being able to swim.
Right. And 50% of the population globally lives within about 50 miles of the ocean, and most people live near some body of water, whether, as you say, it could be a creek or a lake or a flooded quarry, but something. There's water's all around us. 70%. The bathtub, the spa. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of water to get into trouble, and it also doesn't take a lot of water to get comfortable and to get an opportunity and have a lot of fun in the water.
And to realize that it's a passport to where most of life on Earth actually lives. It's the ocean is home for most of life on Earth, and if we stay on the shore, we'll never get to know our neighbors. So,
and you often we heard the story many times how you were knocked over as a child at age 2 by a wave. Boosh. Yeah. But you weren't, frightened of it. You were kind of exhilarated, as you explained.
As soon as I could catch my breath.
But, I think a lot of that has to do with the reaction that
my mom,
your mom had,
she saw the big smile on my face and she let me go back in. Now, some parents would grab their child and scare the life out of them and say, "Oh, don't ever go into the ocean again."
Yeah.
And I know of a number of people, grown-ups, who had a bad experience when they were children, and that stuck with them throughout their life. They're afraid of the water. You need to respect the water, but not really fear it. Respect, understand that you can get into trouble, but if you do, then figure out, feel your power and know what to do if you do get knocked over by a wave.
Exactly.
I love this picture. You are really introducing this young person with the kind of confidence that you should have.
It is a great photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my daughter, Iyadi. She's 5 years old, and this is in Crystal River here in Florida. We were searching for manatees. That search was a failure that day. They didn't get the cue either to show up when we got there either, just like the sharks. But it was still such a fun day out in the water, and met lots of cool people. Very much a social gathering, as you had stated, getting to know your neighbors, through a social activity. And in the time of pandemic, obviously we were socially distancing, and but luckily there's enough water to go around for us to be able to get out there and enjoy it all, and keep our distance for now until it's safe to regather again.
Exactly. It's a wonderful activity that can be done safely and in a distanced fashion. We really, we were happy we had a little swim club that cropped up here called the Bat Rays.
The Bat Rays.
But even in the murky San Francisco Bay, they were determined to try to get kids out because all the pools were closed. Nobody could swim here in a pool, and so what could you do? You could still get out on the water. But again, we're trying to be very safe about it and make sure they were going with instructors and so forth who could teach them.
You have to be a little batty.
This little batty.
Yeah, it's important to focus on what's passed down from the parents and how parents react, just like the way your mother reacted when you got hit with that wave at 2 years old. That's a very pivotal moment in children's lives. And there's a statistic I shared, I'm not sure if we're going to cover that, but only 13% of youth go on to learn how to swim if their parents don't know how to swim or don't have a comfort level with the water. And there's a lot of historical context as to why that is, and we can go into that a little deeper. But it really speaks to how this problem that started relatively long ago, and how it just continues to perpetuate generation after generation, that keeps these disparities in place.
Yeah, and here you are showing the pool time, which is so important. And is it really a problem of is it pool access a problem for, you know, or a barrier to a lot of people learning to swim, or is it more about the sort of the cultural barriers that we have to getting into the water, or a combination thereof?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And so historically, it really starts with the disparities that exist, or the numbers we're looking at exist on among racial lines, really. And for you know, African American people, it starts with slavery and transitions into you know, because it started with them being pulled away from their ancestral homelands in Africa, where they had their own ancestral knowledge of water and navigation and safety and use of waterways, and especially in a sustainable fashion for, you know, for their regions. And they're separated from that and brought here, and then it goes into segregation, you know, post slavery. And it you know, you had black pools and white pools, you know, for a long time, and that wasn't that long ago. You know, segregation in theory ended, you know, in the 50s and 60s, but there's still more subtle types of segregation that exist today, where, you know, counties and local municipalities are building public pools and that creating more access to pools in the more wealthy, affluent areas, like we had discussed before, and not, you know, not in the areas that are, you know, of a lower socioeconomic status. So there's still semblances of segregation and access going on there. Even for indigenous people, you know, you know, especially for like coastal tribes, we had a connection to the water. We have religious, spiritual ceremonies that help us connect to water and its healing properties. You know, there's the phrase mini wichoni, which means water is sacred in the Lakota language. And so that, you know, that's just one indigenous nation here in the Americas that you know, has that connection to water. And through colonialism, you know, and genocide, and forced relocation, we were moved away from our ancestral homelands and coastlines and waterways, and forced to completely change up our lifestyle if we even survived. And and even with our religious practices of water ceremonies and canoe journeys that a lot of different tribes have, it was illegal for us to practice that all the way up till 1978 with the passing of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. And so,
you know, in any language, in any culture, water is sacred.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not just a motto; it's a reality.
And so there's this historical context, you know, for African American and for indigenous people here in this country, as to our disconnect in a lot of ways that continues to perpetuate. You know, but there's a lot of work, a lot of effort to be able to reclaim that and reconnect with the water. And, you know, that's the work we're trying to do.
Yeah. And are there some resources that, you know, people can lean on a bit? I mean, you know, we see things like Boys and Girls Clubs, you know, YMCA, Red Cross, that always are kind of trying, but they're trying to promote sort of the more formalized swimming programs, and to really teach the basics of to float and how to tread water. It's like there's two core skills that I think.
And then you can stretch out and start to swim.
Well, now come on now.
And then,
well, that's how it really all started for me. Is like I fell in love with scuba, and I was like, I want to share this with everybody. And then I started reaching out within my community, you know, there in Oakland at the time, and started getting folks, you know, involved. And I reached out to a few of my friends, and I'm like, hey, I'm doing this Discover Scuba, come in and try it out. You know, I was a dive master in training at the time, so I had to do so many anyway. So I was trying to get my friends in so I could, you know, check those boxes, but also introduce the love of scuba to a lot of my friends as well. And some of them, you know, reached out like, hey, I'd really love to, but I don't know how to swim. And so it really brought me back to like, whoa, okay, like that's a real thing. And so I became a swim instructor. You can see here, I'm working with my daughter again in the pool, you know, showing her how to, you know, body technique and just getting folks, especially youth, involved in swimming, to be able to meet them where they're at and address these disparities, so that they can go on to, if they want to do competitive swimming or triathlons or scuba or whatever else it may be, to just reconnect with the water in new and exciting ways. And just
be comfortable in the water.
Yeah. And so one of the major organizations that I'm closely associated with is Diversity in Aquatics, and the website is diversityiinaquatics.org. I'm the scuba council chair for that organization. And at its core, it addresses the swimming disparities that exist worldwide, not just in America. We have the Caribbean Council. We're looking to expand into other places around the world as well.
That's
and and it's a great organization that addresses like a social determinant of health, like I said before. And we have aquatics councils that help, help people figure out what's next, because they have learn to swim programs, they have treadathons, and lots of programming to get people familiar and comfortable in the water. And they may or may not be the next Maritza McClendon, or Michael Phelps, but they'll be able to at least be able to survive in the water.
right.
And once they get that sense of comfort, they often ask the question, what's next? And so we have a number of different activities for them to participate in afterward as well.
Well, it's gender as well as other factors. Having women in diving, when I began diving, I thought one of the requirements had to be that you had to have a beard. And that's the way
buoyancy.
Yeah.
And it's a reality that half the fish are female, half the dolphins and whales. So there should be no barrier in terms of gender about who gets under the water as far as primates are concerned. So
yeah.
that's changed. I've been a witness and a participant in that change. And it's pretty exciting, not just for diving, but for swimming and all the water activities.
Yeah. And it's one of these things. I mean, I remember my swim lessons, we started off in the pool as well. But pretty soon the pool time there's a lot of competition for it. It was pretty expensive. So in our case, the instructor was always taking us to the beach as well. And just kind of getting us up. Wait, we're going to talk about Patty and Dan really quick. Those are these two organizations that are safety related.
Well, and now the diving organization that for training, the Dan is the organization that has been dedicated to diving safety, and they're actually encouraging snorkelers, just water access generally. It's a global organization, and it really helps to join up if you do become a diver. It gives you that assurance that they've got your back. If you're anywhere in the world, you can sign up for Dan Insurance, and they publish this monthly magazine, which is really a great source of ongoing information and celebrates the kinds of things that you're doing, Anesti. It's really something that did not exist when I began as a diver. And now to see the kids light up. Yeah.
I was saying, our instructor would pack us up and take us over to the beach instead. And, obviously the salt water's stinging our eyes and so forth. And so we all got masks and snorkels and flippers. Pretty soon we wanted nothing to do with going back to the pool, but we wanted to just get there and get it snorkeling. And it was such a transformative experience for me. And I've seen it happen so many times where, kids or even adults, when they have the opportunity to put on a mask and snorkel and
I can see,
get below the surface and just, maybe they're not going to see that shark that you wanted to see, but
they might find a jellyfish.
They might find a jelly, This one was actually kind of stranded up on the beach, and the kids carried it back to the water.
Trying to revive it. I think it's pretty hopeless, but
yeah, you never know.
It's a good thought.
But to get that comfort in the water. And I think that snorkeling is it's a sport that you can do so easily once you kind of have that comfort in the water. And it tends to really encourage people to take those next steps to, that they want to get beyond, they want to go deeper, right?
Dive in.
But it helps them to kind of build that muscle memory, build that, just the nice, that meditative breathing, just having that real comfort in the water. and being able to see cool things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where snorkeling and free diving are one of those things where, like, in contrast, when you look at scuba diving, especially with the equipment involved, you look at that and go, oh, I should probably get some formal training. I don't know what I'm doing, and assembling this gear and putting it together and how it all works, to be able to stay safe. And so there's this intrinsic prompting in your mind to be like, I'm going to go get formal training. But with free diving and snorkeling, it's something that appears on the surface much more casual, that people are willing to go out and do. And in certain cases, there's a stronger safety issue there and disparity, because people are going out trying to dive deeper, like you mentioned, without proper training about what happens physiologically and how to prepare for that and whatnot. So there's a lot of education around just those types of activities as well, around skin diving and snorkeling, to help people do that in a much safer way as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those amazing things that you can see some of the smallest creatures. If you're like, I was swimming around in the eelgrass beds and seeing baby barracudas and miniature conch with their little blue eyes sticking up, but you can also snorkel with the biggest fish in the sea.
Yeah,
just holding your breath and paddling along.
Yeah, we're just breathing naturally at the surface through that snorkel. The dolphins have it built in normally, right?
Yeah.
We have to use that little tube, But just that real ability to just cruise along, find out who lives where. I mean, kids and adults, they just don't want to get out of the water at that point.
Yeah, a lot of the ocean is accessible just within the distance that you can hold your breath, or at the surface. Of course, most of the ocean is deep and dark and cold, but we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But to just take that initial plunge, dive in, go change your life forever. Get to see not just the stars in the sky, but the stars that live underwater.
Yeah, love those stars. What I was really inspired by when I became a scuba diver was like the biodiversity of what you could see underwater, and I wanted to share that. But then when I looked around at my fellow divers, I didn't really see that same diversity. And much like you mentioned, I've read so many stories about when you started out, Dr. Earl, you were the only woman on your team, and on your dive boats, as you were getting started. And I consider you very much a trailblazer in what you have done. And to quote Isaac Newton, if I can see further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And you really laid a strong foundation for helping, not just with scuba diving and water, but just to be a scientist as well, to be able to lay that foundation that organizations like Diversity in Aquatics and the work that I do are really kind of building off of that foundation, to say, here's all the benefits to why it's in everybody's best interest to diversify these communities around water, around swimming, and around scuba diving and ocean exploration.
Mm-hmm. So I applaud you for what you're doing in that regard. And what you see here, taking what you're doing and putting it into action. Scuba Pro actually donated a whole truckload of masks, snorkels, and fins to the community in Cabo Polmo, Mexico, so that the kids there who live right by the water but haven't had access to the kind of equipment that some of the visitors have when they come in to go snorkeling and diving. So it was really fun for me to join them and be the ambassador to convey this equipment to them on behalf of Scuba Pro, and then dive in and see just the transformation. A lot of them had been out splashing around in the ocean, but they did not have a face mask.
Yeah.
They did not have a snorkel or fins. So there's a little repository of equipment that can be used by any of the kids, and to, do a little more, encourage them to.
Well, it's so deeper. Fundamental, and we see it with your wherever people have that ability to really connect to the water that's around them and where they are, then they really begin to care for it, and they understand why they need to protect it, and that it's not always just nice and pretty at the surface, but once you get below, you see that you know, are there fish there, or the same fish there that
or in the market?
On the market, you know, what kind of marine debris, you know, or human debris is on the reef. You know, what can they? Right. It kind of compels that greater sense of caring. And you know, right now in the pandemic, you know, we're seeing like a lot of the PPE is ending up on these reefs, and people are going out and picking it up, and you know, and trying to restore the health of the reef one time, but without being able to see it and learning to know it and care for it, then
if you don't know, obviously you
can't care.
Right.
Absolutely.
And how that starting there with that fundamental of, you know, swimming, being comfortable in the water, leading into snorkeling, and then it can take you to diving.
Yep. So let's go. Dive in.
Where he wants to get to. He's like, let's talk about diving. So this is one of your slides, the benefits of scuba. Mm-hmm. You know, and you're absolutely right. It spans a lot of different sciences. You know, we get, you know, biology, geology. We get a lot of geologists that like to dive.
And I don't know of an astronaut who doesn't like to dive.
Yeah, it's like the perfect analog for space.
Up and down,
and it really does have those you know, multitude of career paths. If we can just get kids to that point. I mean, a kid is as young as age 10 can become certified now.
With care. You
care.
Still have to have a big buddy with you, but gosh, having a buddy with you anyway is really a great idea.
It's another one of those great parent-child opportunities to learn to dive together. Mm-hmm. And then you got a dive buddy for
life.
For life, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like I mentioned before, when you don't have a comfort level with the water, scuba diving seems like a foreign concept to you. So if you can learn how to swim, it makes scuba diving possible. And when you become a scuba diver, you learn about the fundamentals of physics and physiology, and environment, engineering, that open up this world of these things in a way that's make it fun and exciting, but more specifically in this construct where you have to learn these things in order to be safe, especially the physics and physiology of scuba diving. And you're introduced to science in a very practical, very applicable way that opens up the possibilities to be a scientist, or at least, if nothing else, be science-minded. And that's to the benefit of everybody at that point.
Yep.
It really is. And it's, you know, you're kind of carrying your life support system with you, right? It really does.
It does put into focus that Earth is our life support system. Mm-hmm. When we learn about air, what is air, what you put in the tank, and about contaminating the air, making sure the air that you breathe in, that's in your tank is good to breathe, that it's not contaminated. And then you step out of the water and you're breathing air that is contaminated in some cases.
Like that regulator back in, you know.
That's how I justify as much scuba diving to my wife, is that I'm breathing way quality air underwater than I am above the sea.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sad but true.
Absolutely.
Oh, and here you are getting the next generation comfortable with scuba. Yep, that's exactly right. You know, Jean-Michel Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's famous father-son, he said that his father tossed him in the water with a scuba tank when he was 7 years old. With not a whole lot of instruction.
Well, you did that to me when I was like 9, and you just said, breathe normally.
Well, that's my instruction.
So see, as the parents passing the, you know, just breathe normally. It's fine. You know, everything's fine.
You'll be all right. You'll figure it out. It comes naturally. Don't worry about it.
That's right. Don't worry about it. Just don't hold your breath, you know.
Yeah.
Good. So
anyway,
but it's great that it can start in the pool.
Yeah, it's just with the lifestyle that I have and what I do, it's, you know, from my children, it's just something that, you know, they've grown up around their entire life, being around the water, around the ocean, even being able to see me in, you know, do scientific work in aquariums and things of that nature. And so it just really came second nature to them to want to be involved in the water in different ways. And so, you know, this is, he was 8 years old at the time. This is my son, Gio. He's 12 now. This is about 4 years old. And, you know, he was part of the PADI's program called SEAL team training. And he was actually working on being a master SEAL. and when we took this picture, and got to do a lot of fun activities, not just learning about scuba diving, but, you know, in a controlled pool setting, got to learn about, you know, wreck diving. Is simulated, of course, because we're in a pool. So we had this PVC pipe structure that mimicked a shipwreck that he got to kind of dive around and take measurements of, and you know, play around with the idea of marine archaeology and underwater photography and search and rescue and recovery and species identification. So a lot of fun activities that are involved, you know, that are attached to the activity of scuba diving.
Yeah,
good rehearsal for the real thing.
Yeah, and we see it in, you know, like the search and rescue is side of things as well. So it's got very practical applications. You know, we see a lot of police and fire guys that come through our shop, you know, they're you know, but they're always trying to figure out, like, how can we be safer in the water and be really fully prepared to help in an emergency situation where people might not be comfortable. And fortunately, you know, at least around Alameda, you know, we're seeing a lot more diversity in the rescue dive teams too, which I think is great. Because sometimes it's, you know, having a really broad range of people and first responders that are comfortable in the water can lead to other people wanting to learn the same skills.
Absolutely. And when you get hyper focused on diversifying, you know, these activities like this, what I think is important is that when you provide access to scuba diving and the science of scuba diving, that the possibility of becoming a scientist becomes plausible in their minds, and opens up new worlds of opportunity.
Yeah.
And what's important about that is that for the world of science, especially for people of color, especially, you know, African American, Indigenous, you know, people from around the world start to step into the sciences, they bring with them this ancestral body of knowledge, especially here in the Americas, of thousands of years of observation and analysis, especially of these lands here in the Americas, that can better inform our understanding of the world we live in. And that's to all our betterment as well,
right.
to have that more well-rounded sense of science.
Yeah, and there's so much work to be done. I mean, starting on the shore, and then, you know, moving all the way through the, you know, the freshwater sheds and out into the ocean. We've got so much work to be done on, you know, repairing damage that's happened.
So little, so much to discover.
Yeah.
Including getting to know the fish on their own.
Exactly.
Almost, I mean, think about how many people know fish only on their plate.
It's true.
Yeah, fish have varying personalities, as I'm sure you all know. But I first started diving in Florida, and fish are kind of used to scuba divers here in Florida, so they're just like chill, no worries. You know, so some of them are a little territorial, but my first major encounter with that was when, after I got scuba certified, I really wanted to do something with it. So I started getting involved in citizen science, and I got involved with an organization called Reef Check out there. I think you might be familiar. I started just kind of using my scuba skills to help collect data and whatnot. And on one of my training dives to get certified, I'm just moving along the transect line, and I've got my slate, and I'm counting purple urchins, and unfortunately there's too many of them, and I'm just kind of marking along, and and then all of a sudden I feel this hard tap on my head, and I look, and I'm like, thinking, like, if that's my dive buddy, that's a bit rude. He could just kind of shake my fin or something.
It's like whack, whack, yeah.
It's just tapping me right in the head. But I look back, and I'm like, oh, he's not behind me. He's actually ahead of me, you know, a couple of meters on the transect line. And I was like, well, I keep looking around, like, what is going on? And then finally I realized that it's this little, like, you know, 7-inch, 8-inch long Garibaldi. And apparently, you know, it's the state fish of California, and very territorial. And apparently I was near a nesting site. After I came back up, I was like, a Garibaldi, I think, was popping me in the head. They're like, oh yeah, they do that. If you get too close to their nest. Yeah,
they really do.
Yeah, but you know, imagine birds doing what fish do. If you went into the forest and bird came down and sat on your shoulder, or if they came like this, or came like this and sort of swarmed after you as you swam along, they are naturally curious. And maybe in a different time that birds did that to humans too, but because we've always kind of put birds on the menu, I guess they've developed this attitude about humans, and it's only fairly recently that humans have actually taken themselves directly into the sea, and now they, in places where spearfishermen are active, the fish don't behave that way. They learn pretty fast that don't trust a human. But in places where we respect the fish alive, which is the kind of situation I think you were in with the Garibaldi.
Yeah.
They feel safe and they're curious.
Yeah.
They want to taste you.
Or just curious about who you are, especially some of the more tropical fish in the Philippines that'll come up to your mask and are mesmerized by your eyeballs and start just kind of tapping you in the mask.
Yeah.
Just looking at you.
Yeah.
They do meet your eyes. And
you like to say that these group are like the Labrador retrievers of the sea. You know,
they are.
They really like to come
so
up
curious. They follow you.
They do. But
that's a Bahama grouper.
NASA.
Yeah, Nassau grouper. Absolutely. Yeah. They're fun.
They're beautiful.
Of all the groupers, I think they are the most curious, but it's just a habit of all. This is in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef, one of the so-called potato cod, a really big grouper. And they too have that same sense of, who are you? What are you doing here? Let me follow you. Let me show you what the cool places.
For a time, I was volunteering at the Aquarium of the Bay as a scientific diver right there on Pier 39 in San Francisco. And one of my favorite times, there was a lot of really cool things to do there as a volunteer diver, including feeding sharks, because who wouldn't love to do that?
Who wouldn't do that? Yeah.
Yeah, like they didn't show up in the ocean, so I dove into an aquarium where they're a little more confined so I could make sure I saw them. But it was the bat rays in the tanks that were like puppy dogs with varying personalities around, like, you know, some of them would come right up to you, and if they saw the white bucket with the yellow top, they knew what time it was. Oh, they got squid, it is on. And so they'll run up to you and eat right out of your hand, and they'll even nibble you know, little holes in your gloves as you hand feed them, which is just amazing to have these bat rays run up to you like a whole flock of puppy dogs. You know, but then there were some that just were, you know, like they'd want more of a broadcast, like, all right, just throw it over here, I'm not trying to get too close to you. So
I don't trust you quite.
You see that whole spectrum of personalities just within a school of bat rays. And you know, it's not just fish. So you know, more interactions you have, the more you start to see these varying personalities with all kinds of at least charismatic megafauna.
Exactly. Well, I thought, you know, you brought up a really good point about, I think the public aquariums are an excellent place for people to be able to get some experience in, you know, you become a tank cleaner, you get certified, become a docent or volunteer of some capacity. Then that's a great way to get some access. And I know Aquarium of the Bay's got their citizen science diving program. We've been collaborating with them on that as well now. But it's another great way that people that want to dive, it may be a way that they can get in if they're having, you know, feel like there's some other barriers to access, because aquariums always need volunteers.
Yeah, citizen science is such a great outlet. Like once you can get into, you know, and citizen science isn't just to scuba diving. There's you know, environmental citizen scientists, you know, and bird watchers that get involved. But it's a great outlet that for people who are maybe perhaps intimidated by traditional academia and trying to go to a university and get a degree to be a scientist, they can still be involved in various ways. And citizen science had a big part to do with creating my career into where I am now before I even pursued an academic degree.
Mm-hmm. It's true with bird watching as well. You can make a valid contribution to the nature of birds because if you observe carefully and report honestly what you see. And that applies with everything, whether you're looking at the stars above, looking at fish. Anybody can do what a scientist does if you really do that. Observe carefully and report honestly what you see. Look at the evidence. It's just pretty straightforward. People have been doing it for the history of humans, and we advance because of it.
Yeah, I just hosted a talk with Dr. Selena McMillan. She's the Southern California regional manager for Reef Check. We hosted a talk with her last night here at the Florida Tech Scuba Club, and on the topic of citizen science. And she's someone who organizes entire communities of citizen science divers to work with Reef Check, while also having a PhD in the marine sciences. So she had an interesting perspective in saying, like, addressing this pseudo controversy of citizen science data not being valid. And she said, listen, there's people who've been diving areas 20 years that are more knowledgeable and more experienced than someone who's a freshman or a sophomore at an undergraduate facility. You know, like, with proper training and following strict protocols, that data is just as valid as any other student that's pursuing an academic degree easily.
They're out there where the action really is.
Yeah.
Stuck in the lab.
Yeah.
So, Anesti, I actually had the pleasure of joining a group in, again, Acapulco, Mexico, where we introduced the kids to snorkeling. They had some grown-ups. Well, not all of them were. There were a couple of teenagers involved who had problems. They spent much of their life in a wheelchair where you really have difficulty getting around on the land, but in the water, you're so liberated. You can actually be free in ways that you can't when you're on the land, which is one of the great benefits of embracing the ocean, learning to dive. So just have to open your mind to the possibilities and find the ways and means. I have a friend who was paralyzed from the waist, waist down, but he became a really celebrated archaeologist in the UK. And you wouldn't think of him as being, quotes, disabled in the water. He was so strong. And he used his arms more than his flippers, but nonetheless, he got to where he wanted to go because he could. In the ocean, there are lots of things that are possible that you can't do. You can fly underwater. And so it's just a thought that, you know.
Oh, it's a beautiful thought. There's, through my training and experience with DiveHeart, who you may be familiar with, I'm an adaptive scuba instructor and work with people, mostly veterans, but branching out into a lot of other areas that have both cognitive and physical disabilities. And the philosophy at DiveHeart is that the water is very much an equalizing factor when it comes to disabilities. And working more and more with people with disabilities, they actually have a name for us, which are the TABIs, which stands for temporarily able-bodied individuals, because being able-bodied is a very temporary and fleeting idea, if you really think about it. And so it shifts the paradigm, really. It shifts the dynamic of of what is normal. Yeah. And so when you're working with people with disabilities and they get them in the water, you can most oftentimes not even have to make any modifications or adaptations to what is going on, because they're just able to adapt, and that's just the nature of their life. And it's beautiful and inspiring to be able to work with, and both with veterans with PTSD or amputees, or I'm working more and more with people with autism and cerebral palsy to get them in the water as a therapeutic modality, if nothing else. And so even just 30 seconds in the water is a success. 30 seconds of breathing off of a regulator underwater is a success, because that's 30 more seconds than they had before. Right. And I just did a podcast that was released this morning, actually, with Swirl Global. It's a company out of the UK that creates and talks about accessibility to water and aquatics, and talked about my healing journey, but also like the work that I do with others. And it's an amazing thing to create accessibility all around, to make aquatic activities and especially scuba diving more accessible for everyone.
So when I was in my 30s, I got the question from people, well, are you still diving? As if there's a point beyond which you can't do it anymore. Actually, my mother was 81 before she put a mask and fins and took the plunge in Bonaire. You were there.
Yeah, she kind of gave her my arm and took her snorkeling, and she just had she came out with like that huge grin, just like the young girl we saw earlier. But it's just so transformative. And to think
she would tell you, if you're 81, don't wait any longer.
That's right.
It's not too late to start.
But it's true. I mean, no matter your age, there was an article just yesterday about a inner city mayor who was concerned about water safety. So he never knew how to swim, but now he's taken up swimming lessons. So no matter your age, it's something you can do, and you can.
Yeah, there are levels. I mean, there are places that I personally would choose not to go now with heavy current.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That I might have tackled when I was 30. But it's knowing your level of comfort and confidence. But there's no reason why almost anyone with all levels of competence can experience the ocean and freshwater, underwater at some level.
Yeah. And Anesti, you put together the slide showing that there are real areas where improvement can happen, through scholarship programs, the manufacturers, like we talked about Scuba Pro that, brought this gear down to Cabo Pulmo.
Mm-hmm.
But,
right.
There's a lot more industry buy-in that can happen, and just trying to get this broader direct access, always protecting access to the water where you are. So it's not just sort of fenced off, but you can have ways to get in safely into the water and to explore. And
it's an interesting perspective at Diversity in Aquatics, because it's in a lot of ways hyper focused on swimming, especially as a survival skill. And then with the perspective that I have in scuba diving, I'm able to look at both of those communities, both of those worlds, and swimming for a number of reasons. When you look at the community as a whole, roughly about 25%, and that's maybe even being conservative, is of a very low to no cost access nonprofit sector of the community, with a lot of like government funded dollars being part of it, and having there needs to be more accessibility there, but it's a decent portion of the learn to swim and swimming community as a whole, whether it's like YMCA or the swimming team, in junior high and high school that you can join and learn how to swim that way, through these socialized programs in a lot of ways. And then when you look at scuba, I would estimate at best maybe 5%, and I think that might be pushing it, of the larger scuba community worldwide is of an accessibility nature of being nonprofit or an NGO that is actively working toward more accessibility. And so that's one of the endeavors that I've been taking up as Scuba Council Chair, is to connect and consult and collaborate with industry leaders like PADI and NAUI and Dive Heart and even the American Academy of Underwater Sciences, AAUS, to be able to figure out how to create more accessibility. So to scuba diving, and help to expand that nonprofit sector. And so some of the work that's being done right now is through Reef Check California. They have a scholarship that's going to be announced soon to cover the cost of training and materials for applicants that submit their application to be able to join that community and help offset the cost of the training to create more access. And another exciting thing is with the AAUS Foundation, the philanthropic arm of AAUS, just recently created a diversity scholarship to cover the cost of open water training and equipment for one individual, starting for now. And we're going to be working on expanding it for applicants to be able to apply to and be able to receive. And I also serve on the diversity and outreach committee that I think will serve as the selection committee for that scholarship. So there's some work being done, and in some ways I'm a great part of it. In some ways other people are, like Andrea Williams, the vice president of the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. She's really talking with PADI in the same ways that I'm in talks with NAUI about how to create that accessibility, and how a rising tide raises all ships.
Exactly. Sure. And you're never too young to start, right?
This is called imprinting.
Oh, that is very much imprinting. Not just to see me as her father in the tank and scuba gear, but also if you see the blanket, the whales on it, she's just completely encompassed in the world.
She's submerged. Yeah.
This is my daughter. This is when she was a baby. I think she was only about a month or two old here. From the pictures of the 5-year-old you saw there at Crystal River with the manatees. And
that's awesome.
She's like, every once in a while, I'm not one of those like overbearing parents that are like, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or this or that. But I'm like, I ask leading questions sometimes, like, Yeti, do you want to be a scuba diver when you grow up? And she's like, Poppy, yeah, but I want to be a pink scuba diver. I want to have all pink gear. And I'm like, I will make that happen.
Yeah. And then, we still have to have the opportunities to go even deeper, right? So here we are with a little submersible. It's one of our kids in the sub.
Yeah, again, the idea that with diving, scuba diving, breath hold diving, we can get only so far, but the ocean is really deep, and we still need to take that sense of curiosity and package ourselves to be able to explore all of it. That's one of the things, next steps, and anybody can do this at any age. We really look forward to having you climb aboard a little submarine, Anesti, and go. Are you
offering?
Yeah.
I get to talk with you, and now you're giving me a position on one of your submarines. Like, is this my birthday? What's going on here?
Well,
no, one condition: you've got to bring your kids.
Oh, no brainer. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, this is really one of our goals with the Project Deep Hope is to really broadly democratize this working access to the water, and to get people down in submersibles, even if they haven't quite learned to swim yet, or they haven't gotten their certification yet. We can take them down and show them why they need to go.
Yeah, exactly. By any means. Every means.
Every means. All right.
Yeah, I've shared so many times where, like, when people get scuba certified, regardless of their diverse backgrounds, once they've been able to see the beauty of things underwater, I've never seen a case where they don't become an ocean advocate and really want to help to protect the oceans. And there are barriers to that, obviously. So with things like these submersibles and these submarines, it provides even more access to be able to see that without the specialized training of scuba diving that creates a whole new generation of those advocates.
It really does.
Onward and downward. That's our motto.
We're now gonna jump in, and we're gonna get to our Q&A. Are you ready for these?
I hope so.
All right. Orrin says, in Sonoma County, California, we have a large problem with annual drownings. I've seen that. It's terrible. With adults and children on the Russian River particularly. The victims almost universally do not know how to swim, and most of them are from low-income and minority families.
It's exactly what you're talking about.
It's exactly it. Mm-hmm. It's gutting to see that happen over and over and over again. And it's
especially when there are solutions. It doesn't have to happen. It's all about knowing. Well, it's about caring to get kids to know.
Yeah, and that's the basics. Never turn your back on the ocean ever, not even for a second. Trying to get kids to at least learn the basics of floating and treading water, just to be a little calmer and not panic.
There was a case where your son, my grandson,
oh my God,
Taylor,
it was awful.
Slipped on the bank of a river. He was taking photographs, and it was slippery, and he just slipped right in. And
it was fast, cold mountain river, right?
But in his case, he was more concerned about his camera, which was my camera. Yeah. So he was trying to keep his head above water, but mostly to keep the camera above water. And anyway, in the end,
I was yelling at him, drop the camera. Float to the shore.
Save your life. Yeah.
Save your life. And
we can replace the camera. We can't replace you.
But I was kind of sprinting down the bank, hollering at him to, float, get to the shore. And he kind of caught a branch, pulled himself out. And I was never more relieved. And
actually, the camera did survive.
It was fresh water. It was actually fine.
That story that Warren shared, though, it does hit close to home. I lived in Sonoma County when I first moved to California, and have been to the Russian River. I lived there while my wife was finishing her degree at Sonoma State University. And, there are a lot of, there's wealthier, more affluent areas, throughout Sonoma County, just like there is throughout the Bay in California. But there are a lot of pockets of lower socioeconomic status that, just want to go and enjoy the Russian River just like everybody else. And that river can get kind of crazy sometimes. And so it's one of those things where we have to have a number of preventative measures in place through socialized programs, low cost and no cost programs, to be able to build that comfort level in the water before they go out and try and get into someplace like the Russian River. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. It can get away so quickly. You just step into a deeper hole even, and it's that momentary panic, and then it leads to disaster. Stephanie is asking, for certain individuals who seem to have absolutely no fear of the water, how can you teach them to be water safe?
It's one of those things where the water can be very humbling, whether you like it or not. And so it really only takes one incident, one close call for you to have that coming to your creator moment of, I should probably tone down my ego or my machismo a little bit and say let me go and get some extra training, or at least not take so many risks outside of my my comfort level and experience. And so I think that starts to kind of regulate itself in a way. And unfortunately, it doesn't come soon enough for some people, especially adults, who get out there and do that.
We had an experience in Alaska where we had a scientist on board, very strong swimmer. And he was like, I'm going to swim to the shore and get some blueberries for breakfast. And, and pretty soon we heard this kind of splash and we didn't hear anything. And the guy was trying to swim and the water was maybe 48 degrees.
Less than that, 41.
Yeah, really cold. And he like you say, he overestimated his capability. He didn't really think about how far the shore really was. It looked close. It looked closer than it was. And we had to end up, rescuing him and hauling him back onto the boat. And it was that, as you say, that very humbling experience that gave him a real wake-up call as to, how being overconfident or having that ego in the way can really lead to trouble.
Disaster.
And there's other humbling things too, like as a scuba diver, I wasn't exactly an air hog, as they say, but I was one of the first that would have to end my dives a little early in the beginning, and just because I was just so excited and moving around a lot, and and somebody had offered the idea, like, hey, you should probably go back to taking some swimming lessons. And I'm like, my first thought was, I know how to swim, like I'm okay. And then I thought about it a little more, and I was like, once the machismo kind of died down a little bit, I was like, I'll try it out, especially since I wanted to, learn the fundamentals of teaching swimming as well, to be able to help, and that's really a big part of what led on that path as well. And just 3 private lessons later, everybody's like, how did you grow gills? What's going on? Because I was able to swim more efficiently. And it was a humbling experience that really helped, once I took a few steps back, to be able to step back into something like scuba diving and now swimming at the same time, to have a lot more confidence and strength in my abilities because of proper formal training.
Yeah. Competence inspires confidence.
So Oren says that the local Rotary Club in their area has responded to drowning in their region by having every kid in the 3rd grade know how to swim every year.
Oh, that's great.
He says it's been a tremendous gift to the community, and they never know how many people that they've saved. But why isn't swimming routinely taught to everyone in the public school system?
Yeah, even if you live inland.
Yeah,
there's a number of places around the world, and not to delve too much into politics and political ideologies, but there are socialized programs where it's part of public education, elementary school systems, to learn how to swim as part of their physical education programs. And I think that might be a whole other conversation altogether about why we might not have programs like that here in America, but it's very clearly needed still.
Yeah, it's you don't have to be Superman or Superwoman or competitive. It's just that basic comfort and a capacity to handle yourself in the water. That is, it's a gift. It's another language, and it doesn't matter who you are. It'll serve you well.
Absolutely.
Even in the shower.
Water, wherever.
Yeah, thinking you're the next American Idol, and all of a sudden you slip and fall in the bathtub. Like, those skills are helpful.
Don't panic.
Let's see. Ella is asking, can you share some more information in regard, whether they're asking about the submersibles? That's just going to Deep Hope. We'll bring some more information on that, I think on a different program.
Go online too.
Yeah, and going online. And Tristan is asking if, Anesti, can you speak to your experience in navigating water safety as a scuba diver in warm water and cold water? What are the difficulties between the two, particularly if you have to wear a lot of neoprene?
Yeah, that's a great thing. I learned how to scuba dive in Florida, which is much warmer waters. I was, I think I started out wearing maybe a 3 mil suit because I got certified in February in the late winter, and that was because I did want to do it the summer before, but I had to wait a few months until I got my tax return so I could afford scuba training. So I had to wait till mid-February when my tax return came in, and it was a bit chilly then. But then when I moved to California, my wife took me to Bodega Bay. And it was my first time touching or feeling the Pacific Ocean on the California coastline. And I put my foot in the water and I freaked out. Like, who in their right mind even goes swimming for casually in this water, let alone being fully submerged in diving? And come to find out, some pretty awesome, amazing people do it all the time. Very, very salt of the earth people who are just like, this is what it is. And so it's inspiring. And I learned how to become an instructor in scuba there in Monterey Bay. And, I told my divers, if you can learn how to dive in California, you're going to be good everywhere pretty much, except maybe for ice diving. And even then you're going to have some comfort levels still more than others. And so, there's a lot of factors, but when it comes to like swim safety, it's interesting because, the coldness of the water, like, California coastlines are anywhere from like 48 to 55-ish year round most of the time. And so it's not really as fun in theory, maybe if you're surfing or scuba diving, but if you're just kind of swimming there, like, all right, I'm cold, I think I'm going to get out now. And you spend less time in the water than people who spend much more time, let's say, in the beaches of Florida. And so the environmental factors in that regard are a factor that need to be overcome. But with proper formal training, especially in pools, can really help mitigate that a lot, to be able to build up that comfort level in controlled environments, with proper supervision before you go out into the beaches of Florida or California. Yeah. And start to work on acclimation, because you already have a strong basis of water safety and comfort first.
Yeah, we really enjoy that when we have an opportunity we have visiting, scientific divers sometimes will come through, and they'll go out with one of our instructors just to kind of make sure they're really, what they're getting into in the cold water. But
so this will date me again a little bit, but when I began diving, wetsuits did not exist. In the 50s, they did not. I think it was maybe in the late 50s, early 60s. It was in the 60s that I acquired my first wetsuit, and it was rubber, and it was hard to get into. You had to use talcum powder or cornstarch to try to slither yourself in. And I mean, it's still, wetsuits can feel a little confining, but those early dive suits were really even more so. The materials today are so, well, they've been thought through. Yeah, lots of experience.
Yeah,
and
improving all the time.
Comfort is a key, and to be able to dive comfortably into California waters or even into Arctic and Antarctic waters. There are now means that did not exist not so long ago. So being aware, first of all, of the temperature, being too warm is also another problem.
We've seen that.
You can get overheated in a
Mm-hmm.
in really warm water. But gauging the right suit for the right temperatures is key. And even skins, just these lightweight protective gear to protect you against the sun. And there's little jellies that
stingies,
they don't mean to give you a hard time, but they can really make you itch if you come in contact with them. So having those lightweight suits, skins, 3 mil or even less, makes a big difference.
Absolutely. I remember I would joke with my California colleagues that in Florida, I get out of the water to cool off because in the summer, it's like 89, 90 degrees. It feels like a bathtub. And but when I got to California, I put on a 7mm wetsuit for the first time because they're like, this is what you need. And I felt like the Michelin Man, even with the advances in technology that we have over how you started out with wetsuits. It was still like, this is what people dive in, and they're like, oh, wait till you put on thermals and a dry suit. That's going to be even more fun.
Smurf
40
suit,
pounds of weight
and everything. But.
Oh, and I'm a pretty big guy too. So even just with a 7-8 mil wetsuit, I was used to getting down in a rash guard with 8 pounds of ballast weight on me, and then all of a sudden I'm going up to like 30, 34 pounds to be able to get down to compensate for the extra buoyancy of this big old neoprene suit.
Oh, but you were warm.
Yeah.
I got acclimated pretty quick. People are still, even some of my Florida colleagues still are like, I don't know how you did it in 48-degree water. I was like, oh, wait till we hit the thermoclines, at 50, 60 feet. And you're getting into the upper 30s at that point, and you just roll with it.
All right. We've got a question from Hannah. Do you have any advice for educators in the dive industry for inspiring students in conservation and developing a lifelong love of the ocean?
It's all about in the way that you teach. So if you teach scuba diving, there are unfortunately some scuba divers that are just there to check some boxes and, all right, you know how to recover your regulator, you know how to clear your mask, you know how to do alternate air source sharing, and maybe in a fleeting moment, when they talk about neutral buoyancy, they cover the topic of like making sure you're not dragging along the bottom, and that's really about it. But you have the opportunity that if you have that passion around the environment and the protection and advocacy of these beautiful and delicate ecosystems underwater, that you have every opportunity and should take every opportunity to really emphasize that in your class and teach the class at a pace that is conducive to what you think are the most important takeaways for your students. Right. And that academic freedom that you should be able to have in teaching your courses through scuba diving should be able to give you that opportunity to do that.
So you're absolutely right that the instruction attitude makes all the difference. Mm-hmm. In the early days of instruction, there seemed to be kind of this widespread, not universal, but widespread attitude that you have to harass new divers. You rip the mask off and then see what they do. You turn off the air. Yeah. I mean, all in the kind of the chest thumping, I can do it. Just let's see if you're tough enough to do it. And that has changed.
Thankfully.
The idea of having to do a free ascent from 100 feet, you drop your gear and then try to make it to the surface on the air that you've got in your lungs. There's been a shift in the approach to how you get people comfortable in the water, not to be, frightened of it. And so,
yeah, I'm glad that shift exists, because I think that if I'm not mistaken, the historical context of scuba diving itself really started with military veterans. Yes. And so that sense of hazing and, messing with each other and really trying to push the limits in those ways, if nothing else for fun, really kind of resonated with that background of veteran divers, combat divers, warfare divers that are, coming back from military service and really helped bring about this, a sense of recreational activity of scuba diving that, okay, you introduced scuba diving to us, great, we'll take it and leave all this other toxic masculinity stuff behind and just embrace the fun activity of it without all this other nonsense.
It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
It's actually to the sea. It's a door to the ocean that really will change your life for sure. I mean,
it changed my life.
Yeah, it's exhilarating. It really is a beautiful experience, that weightlessness and all the rest. But for so many, certainly for me, it's a way to get to where I want to go.
Yeah.
Circumstances that give me time. And I often don't travel very far when I get underwater. I tend to find a place that looks pretty good, and like walking in the forest, you sit down and you watch and you wait, and wonderful things happen. The animals lose their caution if they aren't already following you around.
Yeah, very early in my career, when I got scuba certified, it was such a pinnacle moment, but it gave me the possibility of doing something with it. And that's when I got involved in citizen science, like I had shared. And then the more work I did that, the more becoming an academically credentialed scientist became more of a possibility. And very early in that part of that career, I'm just like, still having like any other child almost, in a way, like, oh, I want to be a marine biologist, because that's the go-to for anybody who, for if you have the idea of wanting to work with the ocean. Meanwhile, there's so many other jobs and positions that work with the ocean in different ways that I've come to know over the years. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine, Tristan McHugh, who was she's with the Nature Conservancy now. She was like, forget titles and degrees and all that stuff. Just close your eyes and tell me what you want to do. And I shared with her that I wanted to be at the forefront of ocean exploration. I wanted to be at the forefront of discovery through scuba diving, through ROVs and submersibles, and just, and just really lay my eyes on things that no other human may not have ever seen before, especially in the deep ocean. And she was like, I think you don't want to be a marine biologist. I said, really? She goes, no, you want to be an oceanographer. And I was like, I'm not really sure what that is. And she goes, do you know? And no, in the conversation, she goes, do you know Dr. Sylvia Earle? I was like, I know of her. She's amazing. She's like, she's an oceanographer. And I'm like, sold,
So,
and I started researching what it was, and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do, because I as much as I love and appreciate and respect marine biologists, I don't want to be staring down a microscope in a lab all day. I want to be in the field at that forefront of exploration and come home smelling like the ocean every day, whether my wife likes it or not.
That's right.
Not like your wetsuit, but like the ocean.
No, yeah, the ocean. We'll leave it at that.
So we've really run out of time today, but
oh my goodness, look at all these questions.
I know, but we just wanted to say what our main, kind of our main takeaways are. What do you have to say there, Anesti? Our main takeaways are: how do we get safe in the water? Just grab a kid and get in there, just like we saw you doing there, or grown up, or
anyone.
Yeah, if you have access to a pool and you have the means to, by all means, just start with your family, start with your children, your cousins, your nephews, anybody and everybody. Get them involved in water in fun and exciting ways that are in controlled environments, to be able to develop that comfort level with water. And let the possibilities grow for them. Don't stymie them with preconceived notions about who can or can't swim, or what people are made for. Just forget all that, and just if you could just introduce them to the water, their curiosity is going to naturally grow. Their wonder and sense of adventure and exploration and curiosity is going to thrive. And so it really just takes planting that seed and getting them over in the water.
My motto, and I think it's yours too: no child left dry.
No, you get them wet, keep them wet. Yeah, keep them in the water. It's so much fun. It's life-changing, and it starts with youth.
Yeah, and I really hope that we can find ways and means to, get more people of color directly involved in ocean exploration, in just
all shades.
Yeah, but just to get out there, and to, if you're an adult and you've never learned to swim, take the opportunity to engage.
Find a kid
and learn to do it together. It can just be, as you said, such a transformative experience, and really making an enduring difference, not only for yourself, but for the future of those kids.
Yeah, just like you shared the social activity of it, the more diverse that community starts to be, the more we can start to get to know each other, better understand each other, and really start to work together in those ways, and really help well inform each other, to really see that there's more similarities than differences between us, to to be able to come together, especially around, if nothing else, the protection of the ocean, and the advocacy of it. Absolutely.
Water connects us all, and we all need to be aware of that, and why we need to protect it. I mean, it's fundamental to our life, to every life. We all have to have fresh, drinkable water, and we need an ocean that supports a healthy planet. I
think that's our takeaway. Water connects us all.
It really does.
And the ocean is the great equalizer.
Absolutely. That's another good one.
And before we close today, Sylvia and I would like to say thank you, Anesti. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the Ocean Elders, our producers, and mostly thank you everyone who comes and joins us and keeps returning to dive in with us each time. Water does connect us all, and we're grateful to everyone. And we're going to be back on March 25th. And we're going to be talking about horseshoe crabs.
Oh, horseshoe crabs.
That's awesome.
I'm
looking forward to it.
And until then, take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it, because, no, that's it. Take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it, because
it does.
It does. Thanks again, everyone. See you next time.